I did my own grandfather's. And let me tell you, I never thought the sound of dirt hitting a casket would be upstaged by a 50-something bleach blonde in a neon pink blazer, shrieking across the cemetery mud, jabbing a finger in my face and yelling, "Your grandpa was just a squatter." Yeah, that happened. That was Brandy Hutchwell's opening move in her little war against my family. And right there with the roses barely wilted, and Chester Thornfield, my hero, still being lowered into the earth, she demanded I hand over every acre he'd left me. 900 to be exact. She was waving her arms about community property and how I didn't deserve $3 million worth of prime farmland. The gall calling my grandpa a decorated Vietnam vet who'd bled, sweated, and outlived 4 county assessors on that land a squatter at his own funeral. Biggest mistake of her life. Because Chester didn't just leave me land, he left me a nuclear bomb, legally speaking. The kind you save for anyone stupid enough to come sniffing around with sticky fingers. Now I know you're probably wondering, what would you do if this circus happened to you? Drop your location in the comments. Because trust me, most HOA drama doesn't end with federal indictments. Let me back up a sec, let you see how I landed here. My name's Riley Thornfield. I'm 34, do remote IT consulting, and 3 months ago my biggest crisis was whether to upgrade my laptop. Now I'm standing in a farmhouse kitchen older than sliced bread, trying to breathe through the pipe tobacco and ancient coffee stains that still cling to the air, grappling with the fact I'd just inherited what amounts to a small kingdom. See, Chester raised me from the time I was 8 after my parents' car wreck. He was built like an oak tree, rough as bark, with hands that could crack walnuts and a smile that softened any storm. Every summer evening we'd sit on the porch, swing him, puffing his pipe, talking about how land wasn't just dirt, it was legacy. I thought I understood, but the day the lawyer handed me a folder the size of a steakhouse menu and said, "It's all yours, son," I nearly fell over. 900 acres, 400 in timber, 300 in pasture, 200 with the homestead and barn. All of it clear paid for, mapped out to the last boundary line by Chester himself. For a week I just wandered the place, running my hands over his old maps, the ones that still smelled of machine oil and dust, trying to find the edges of this impossible gift. Then, like a bad penny, Brandy slithered in. She'd moved to Millbrook Falls 3 years ago, bought a McMansion with fake columns bigger than our whole barn. Crowned herself HOA president 6 months in, mostly because nobody else wanted to referee her wine-fueled crusades. Every morning she'd look out from her deck, clutching a wine glass at 10 a.m., staring across the fields Chester built, seeing nothing but dollar signs. She wanted to pave over all that wasted farmland, put in a golf resort, condos, a spa. You know, the full suburban cancer treatment. I hadn't even figured out which end of a cow eats grass before she filed a county complaint called Grandpa's Will Suspicious and demanded an investigation into whether some unfit city boy deserves such valuable property. Did she stop there? Not a chance. She got a hit piece into the local paper spinning that I'd sell to some toxic waste company, scaring everyone about farm runoff and plummeting property values. The kicker: she Googled how to steal farmland legally on the library computer and left the evidence sitting there like a neon sign. Sweet Mrs. Patterson, our librarian, screenshotted it faster than you can say subpoena and sent it to half the county. Thing is, Brandy assumed I'd fold at the first sign of trouble, that I was just some soft city kid. What she didn't know was Chester had spent his last years building a legal fortress, documenting every transaction, every water right, every zoning permit. He survived 3 tours in Vietnam, 40 years of drought, floods, and bureaucrats. He didn't just teach me how to plant corn. He taught me how to dig in for war. But Brandy, she wanted that land so bad she could taste it, and she came at me swinging with a lawsuit 2 days after Chester's funeral. I was in my pajamas battling Chester's prehistoric coffee machine when the sheriff's deputy rang the bell, official envelope, legalese thicker than Grandma's gravy. She was claiming Chester's will was forged, accusing me of fraud, demanding the judge freeze the estate. Suddenly, my $3 million inheritance was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Couldn't sell, couldn't develop, couldn't even chop firewood without a judge's okay. Now, Chester always said, don't fight until you know your enemy. So while Brandy was strutting around thinking she'd won, I drove down to the courthouse, filed a Freedom of Information Act request, HOA records, planning docs, everything. $47. Later, I was neck-deep in email chains, finding out she'd been plotting with a developer before she even bought her house. She'd written plain as day, once we forced the sale, water rights transfer automatically. That's when it hit me, Chester's old well permit from 1962, first in time, first in right. His rights predated the whole subdivision. No water, no golf course. Legally, I could cut them off tomorrow. I called Brandy. "Hey neighbor, heard you're worried about water quality." The silence that followed stretched longer than a country road. When I explained the permit situation, her next move was to wage all-out reputation war. Anonymous Yelp reviews, fake complaints to the county, rumors in the local press. She even tried to plant stories about me selling to toxic waste companies. But small towns aren't like the city. People remember who helped them during a drought, who taught their kids to drive stick. Marcus at the paper, Dolores at the diner, Buck at the hardware store, Mrs. Patterson at the library. They started watching. Suddenly I had my own intelligence network. Every suspicious meeting, every odd supply purchase, every computer session was logged. By week's end, I was practically running the CIA for Millbrook Falls. Brandy's next move was bureaucracy as weapon. She convinced the county to review our zoning. Inspectors showed up measuring chicken coops, counting fence posts, recording every rooster crow at sunrise like it was a crime. Then animal welfare investigators came with cameras, anonymous tip about unsafe cattle conditions. I watched a city inspector examine Grandpa's prize bull like it was about to rob a bank. The woman was dragging Chester's legacy through the mud just to try to force me out. That weekend I set up trail cameras, Chester's old hunting gear. 48 hours later, jackpot. Brandy's pink Cadillac at the North Gate, 11 p.m. Her stumbling around with a flashlight, snapping photos of everything from water troughs to compost piles. While she played amateur detective, I dug deeper into HOA documents. Turns out her power was built on nothing. No state incorporation, no proper voting. Just a wine club with a gavel. But then the cameras caught her at 3 a.m., dumping something into Willow Creek, same creek the county was scheduled to test the next week. That morning, the water was rainbowed with chemicals. She was framing Chester's farm for pollution, poisoning her own community to do it. I kept my cool, kept watching, documenting. Meanwhile, Brandy kept burning bridges. Her social media meltdowns, fake news stories, threats. Pretty soon, even her own neighbors were closing their windows when she called. Our side, though, just kept growing stronger. Dolores tracked her meetings, Buck kept tabs on supply purchases, Mrs. Patterson on computer searches. Everything pointed to one thing: she was researching adverse possession. That's legal speak for wait 7 years and claim someone else's land. The plan was to make my life hell until I left. But what Chester had built wasn't just land, it was loyalty. Every neighbor, every friend he'd ever helped now had my back. Even when the county tried to bankrupt me with a $47,000 property tax bill, Grandpa had me covered: veterans benefits, homestead exemptions, hidden forms he'd filled out decades ago. One call and the tax bill dropped like a rock. Still, I hired backup. Jake Morrison, ex-FBI, burned coffee and justice for breakfast. In 72 hours, he uncovered Brandy's whole history. Born Brandy Hutcherson in Oklahoma, bankruptcy court, regular pro at name changes and development scams. Her partners had already sold $80 million in guaranteed condos, betting the farm literally on getting Chester's land. And every legal action she took, every zoning application, was building evidence for her own destruction. Then, cleaning out Chester's kitchen, I knocked over his old recipe box. Out spills a yellowed piece of paper, 1962 Perpetual Agricultural Covenant. Any attempt to rezone, develop, or build, the property reverts to the state for conservation. Forever. I nearly laughed out loud. Chester had booby-trapped the whole operation. Brandy couldn't win. The more she fought, the closer she came to triggering her own annihilation. So we let her keep pushing. Every vandal crew in fake utility hats, every bogus environmental complaint, every midnight trespass captured on camera, recorded, documented. When she tried bribing, the county inspector got it on tape. Tried to torch the barn security footage. Arson, bribery, conspiracy, all on a silver platter. The county commissioners called an emergency meeting. The courthouse packed to the walls, TV cameras rolling. Harlan Becker, Chester's old friend and lawyer, rolled out the evidence: video, audio, paper trails. Brandy tried to shout us down, confessing to fraud and bribery right there, thinking she could bully the truth. But the room turned on her. Applause thundered as the feds slapped handcuffs on her, her pink Cadillac being hauled away outside. The very people she'd tried to charm realized she was about to destroy the place they loved. Justice isn't always instant, but when it lands, it's sweet. Brandy, 5 years in federal prison. The inspector, 3 years, lost his pension. the whole development scheme blown open. The community voted to dissolve the HOA, turning the subdivision into a state park. Neighbors learned to farm-built gardens and started living the rural dream Brandy tried to pave over. We used the barn as a community center, started scholarships in Chester's name, made the place better than ever. And the lesson? Well, it isn't about land, not really. It's about the value of patience, of relationships built over decades, and the wisdom to prepare for storms you may never see. Chester always said the best defense is to know your enemy and your friends. Because in the end, bullies burn out, but a legacy, that endures. Karma doesn't just knock on the door out here, it kicks it down, serves justice with apple pie on the side. So what would you have done? Would you go to war for what's right or walk away and let someone else pave over your legacy? Let's hear it. Drop your own stories, your thoughts about justice and power in the comments. Because around here, community isn't just a word, it's the line we draw in the dirt together.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.